What's up, YouTube fam? Welcome to another episode of Goblin Town Reviews, where today we're doing an album review. We're doing the first half of Bloodbath over Bloodstock.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a live album that came out in 2011. It was requested by my brother Sean.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean, this is for you. And yeah, we're going to do the first half today, and then we'll film the other half and we'll release it. This is going to come out as two videos.
Mm-hmm.
So, a little bit of history on Bloodbath. They're kind of a... Nightmares Made Flesh, the album by Bloodbath, is considered by many to be one of the best death metal albums of the 2000s. Bloodbath started out as a project by Michael Ockerfeldt from Opeth, and I believe the guitar player Blackheim from Catatonia. And on Nightmares Made Flesh, they actually had the guy Peter from Hypocrisy doing vocals. But it looks like for this live album, even though there's a lot of songs from Nightmares Made Flesh on this live album, they have Akerfeldt from Opeth doing the vocals and guitars. I'm assuming he does guitar. Maybe he doesn't, but so we're gonna kind of go over the first half of this thing. Brandon, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I was trying to imagine myself being there live. But I was having a good time with it. Initially, before I did an active listening session, I was kind of trying to listen through some of it, and like in the car, and it really wasn't working. I don't know. If you've tried to listen to live music and you haven't enjoyed it, try and find a different way to listen to live music, like maybe with headphones or something, because once I put on the headphones for an active listening session, I was more immersed and it all sounded fine. It wasn't like maybe a little muddled, but like to an extent where I was like, yeah, it's live. Like, what are you going to do, genuinely? So with that, I liked the tones that I heard.
Yeah.
I liked the riffs that I heard.
There were some nasty ass riffs on this live album.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like a lot of the death metal that I got into was really technical and like on the progressive side of things. And this is kind of like the opposite of that. This is a lot more like 90s death metal worship right here.
Yeah. I feel like
the riffs are a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward and direct.
Breeding Death was one that I feel like that one was just really like plain, like not in a bad way, but just like plain, like I wrote meat and potatoes ? Because something about it felt so like solid, like just like what it's supposed to be. Like there was a formula that they followed, and they did a good job with it.
Yeah, and that came off of an EP of theirs. I don't remember which one it was, but
it was called Breeding Death.
That was the name of it? Okay. Yeah, well, I was surprised whenever I heard that song in particular. I was like, man, I thought it might be one of the best on the album.
Okay.
Just based off the strength of the riffs alone. But yeah, it's not like noodly and like techy or anything like that. It's a lot more like, like Ockerfeldt says in one of the transitions between the songs, he's like, we're here to celebrate bands like Entombed and Dismember. Those were, Bloodbath is from Sweden.
Yeah.
And so if you were into death metal and you were from Sweden in the early 90s, there were like three major bands that you would have been into, and Entombed was like the biggest one.
Yeah.
So they were like part of the early European death metal movement that kind of started just after the Americans did it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and if you listen to, like, Entombed has an album called Left Hand Path that's celebrated in death metal circles as, like, a classic album. Came out, like, 90 or 91. Anyway, if you listen to the guitar tone on that album, it sounds just like this. It's got that kind of, like, high frequency buzzing sound along with it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Like, does it come out in, oh man, I don't know, sometimes with the effects, or like they'll throw a squeal, like a pinch harmonic will really like, they really pierce whenever they focus on something more high pitched. Like Mass Strangulation had like a I wrote down wow 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 guitar is cool.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find that one real quick. Oh, I see. Yeah, he was funny at the beginning of that one. He said the next riff is the stupidest riff that you will ever hear, and he was right. It was pretty stupid. But
yeah, dude, it sounds like You Fucked Up by Ween. That one, it goes, like which one was I singing? I don't even know.
But I think Mass Strangulation was one of my least favorites on the album, even though I did enjoy the solos. I enjoyed most of the solos that were on this album.
Yeah.
I thought they were pretty cool. So
because there wasn't a whole lot, but whenever they kicked in, I was like, all right, here we go.
It's just sometimes I think the music can get a little basic. It's like when I tried it, like we're going to go see, hopefully we're going to go see Amon Amarth in December.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it's in St. Louis or Kansas City.
Okay.
But yeah, it's that big tour with Cattle Decapitation and Obituary and Carcass.
Yeah.
So if we end up going to that, like Obituary, right? Like they're one of the old school death metal bands. They're like legends, right? So I went back and listened to some of their records about a month ago, and I describe it like Neanderthal metal. It's like really simple and basic, but it's like really rough and grating at the same time. And and yeah, there were some of the songs on this album I feel like fell into that a little bit. One of them being Mock the Cross. I put on my notes on that one, I said back to the simplistic shit.
I wrote nothing crazy, like it was just, that one felt like a song. Breeding Death, I liked it at first, but then, I don't know, in the grand scheme of things, it got kind of lost because it was more simple. Even though I enjoyed it while I was listening to it. I didn't like Process of Disillumination. I don't know, like, what about it? It just didn't grab my attention. The riffs on it just were flat, I guess.
Yeah, there was almost like a punk drum beat around like the 2 minutes and 30-second mark that I was like surprised to see in there.
Is that when it, see, I wrote, I don't know if it's the right like term, but I said I liked it a little bit better when it went into the halftime.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, maybe we're thinking of the same part. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that part better.
Yeah, that one I wasn't really crazy about that one also, but it did remind me a little bit of some of Carcass's stuff. Carcass, you know, we're talking about like early 90s Carcass, when they were releasing like Heartwork and whatnot. I guess mid to early 90s. But even though this is obviously it's less polished than that stuff because this is a live album. But yeah, I thought that one was okay. I guess my favorite of the initial tracks was Cancer of the Soul.
Me too.
Yeah, and that one's off of Nightmares Made Flesh.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So is Eaton, and so is Outnumbering the Day. All those songs are off of that album.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, no, like, I'm like, my biggest issue with doing these reviews is that I feel like, I'm like, I don't even know the songs. I don't even remember the songs I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
Like, even this one, I'm like, this is my favorite one, and then I'm like, what did I like about it? I said that riff gave my soul cancer. Because it was good, the taps.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was like, it kind of went back and forth with the drums and the guitar. But the way it switches up, in the cymbal, anytime there's like a psst, 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 psst,
yeah.
I don't know, man, just like, even though it's like, even though it's fucking death metal, I'm like,
yeah.
I also liked Mouth of Empty Praise. I don't know, like it was just, I felt like it was kind of crazy. It just had blast beats and shit, and it was a lot of stuff going on, but it didn't metal up in my mind like stuff that like that can.
Yeah, Mouth of Empty Praise was awesome.
Yeah. Like, I thought the drums were really good on the whole song.
Yeah, I thought the riffs were nasty. Really cool guitar line around a minute in. And Ockerfeld said they only played together live 8 times before the show.
Oh.
Which, if that's true, it's impressive because they sound extremely tight.
Yeah, no.
Or only having played together 8 other times.
There was like one moment on, I think it was Isos.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I like how it started, but then it got to like the middle section, and I don't know, maybe the playing got a little muddled and just like kind of off, because on like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just sounded weird, but then, because there was one part, it like switches pace, and started like the guitar's like doing kind of like a slight like a ding 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 ding, and it was muddled in my brain. And then they switched to another part that I didn't like as much, where they were like saying the names or whatever, and then it went back into the part that initially I thought sounded muddled, but I thought it sounded better.
Yeah.
And that's what led me to believe, like, maybe it just wasn't quite timed up perfectly, and that was having an issue in my brain. Because it sounded better, and then it just kind of tightened up towards the end, but the middle part of that one kind of, aside from, like, they played it fine, but I just personally wasn't the biggest fan of that choice of direction in the song.
It's weird, sometimes you'll like a song, and then, like, there's one part or maybe a couple of parts that you don't like because they'll switch gears and go into a new direction, and you don't like the new direction they went into. And, you know, if it depends on how much of the song you really enjoy, because if you really enjoy most of it, you're still going to listen to it.
Right, and you'll probably start to like that part or appreciate
you're
it.
just going to endure that change in direction for a little while until it grows on you, maybe.
Yeah.
But if the whole song's like that, I'm probably not going to listen to it. So
well, that
there
was
has to
one
be
of
something there that catches you.
Yeah, that was one of the first ones that stuck out to me whenever I wasn't like actively listening. Whenever I was like in the car and I was having a hard time with it, that one stuck out. I mean, the riff was very like ding-a-dong, 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 ding-a-dong. And that was easy for me to make out, and I was like, okay, let's go. I said I like the chugs. But yeah, so
that's kind of like the name of the
more.
game, and you know, Bloodbath is like a throwback. You know, they're pretty much like in that early '90s mold, but
they got a new single.
Yeah, I saw that's on my list actually. We may do the new single, we may not. It just depends on what we have that we need to get done. But yeah, they're kind of like you know, in that style of death metal. That low chug is kind of like the name of the game. You know, it's like chugs and power chords and blast beats and gruff vocals. That's like the music in a nutshell.
Like, I mean,
you may have
dying
like a flashy
fetus
solo
subjected to a beating.
Yeah.
The way that
I mean, you may have like a flashy solo here or there, but most of the music is going to be pretty meat and potatoes, unless you're talking about some of the more progressive death metal, like Death, their later albums, or like Cynic, or like you know, anything that was like, or even some of the more melodic death metal stuff. That foundation, that cornerstone of death metal, that is kind of what Bloodbath speaks to, in my opinion. And I think that's why they're so celebrated amongst people that are old enough to remember when death metal was a new thing.
Right.
And that still are attached to that old sound.
Right.
They can take solace in a band like Bloodbath, who's still honoring a lot of those old sounds.
Yeah.
You know, without getting too crazy.
Well, like, I wasn't there, right? So like, it's like watching third person, but I can see that.
Yeah.
From them, I get that essence very well, that they are encapsulating something. Like, if I was to listen to it and be like, this sucks, it's like so basic or blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like, I would sound fucking stupid.
Yeah, well, no, you'd just be an elitist. you'd be like, oh, I'm a proggy, techie, methy guy.
Like, just because things
Like-
have evolved doesn't mean you can't appreciate.
But it's
Like, you don't want to rehash it over and over and over again, but if you can appreciate it and formulate it into like it doesn't have to progressive. It doesn't have to be progressive, and I mean that like in a literal sense, like not just like music progressive, like
Yeah. But to kind of hammer this point home, so compare this to like the Archspire that's come out in the last year. By the way, I did check up on what you said. They did win a Juno Award for Bleed the Future this year.
Just the whole album.
The whole
Best
album, yeah. Best hard rock metal album from Canada that year was Archspire, so that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But compare that stuff to this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's all under the death metal umbrella, but you're talking about two totally different sounds. And two totally different people are going to be attracted to each one. Like, I'm kind of like a death metal nut, so I can kind of like appreciate both. But even when I listen to some of that early 90s stuff, I can't do it because it's too basic.
Well, it's like,
this is rough.
This is like slowly slicing the victims, mass strangulation, strangling them slow, and the technical stuff is just like ripping limbs, like
that's like your mass shooter, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna kill a bunch of people.
It literally sounds like the fucking like drums, but like I think they both encapsulate death and metal and brutality in two different but very good ways. Like the caveman slowy type is like that primal, and then you got your more modern school shooter metal.
Okay, so there's actually like, so around the turn of the 2000s, death metal got a lot more technical.
Around the turn of the 2000s?
Yes. Okay. At the end of the 90s into the 2000s, death metal got a lot more techie. And then now we have both. We have the techie shit, and we have the stuff that is trying to emulate the old stuff. Like bands like Undeath is a good example of like a modern death metal band that's still playing that classic sound.
I don't know if I know any modern bands still.
The only reason I know about them is because of the Needle Drop and Fantano, because Fantano likes the old stuff. He hates like the techie proggy stuff. He thinks it's too clean.
Yeah.
So like, but what I'm saying is now we have both of these like parallel streams going in death metal, you know.
Yeah.
For like people that like one style versus the other, they can pick and choose what bands they want to get into.
It's really interesting because like what people take from it. Because I don't know. I guess it makes sense. Some people wouldn't like the technical stuff, and then some people wouldn't want the caveman stuff. But I don't know what those people are looking for with their music. Because like with us, I don't know, or at least with me, just the brutality in general. It doesn't matter what shape it takes. Like as long as I feel something, I don't care how I feel it. And there's no like specifics to what makes me feel it, at least not that I'm in touch with. And nothing that separates technical and like the slower stuff.
Yeah, I think a good riff is always going to be a good riff. You know, it doesn't matter if it's straightforward or simple. And I think there are a lot of good riffs on this album, even just this first half, you know. Mm-hmm. I thought Isios, you know, Breeding Death, Mouth of Empty Praise.
I thought Soul Evisceration had a good riff.
Cancer of the Soul. Soul Evisceration. I mean, all those songs have good riffs on them, so I think the music is still strong. Mm-hmm. But it's just, I found myself like listening to the studio versus the live album.
Yeah.
And I think the studio album sounds a little bit better on some of these tracks, and I think that's like pretty normal for live recordings. It's really hard to get a live recording that sounds super clean and tight, you know, well produced. But for a live album, though, I thought this was pretty well done.
Yeah, I don't have like the most experience. Like growing up, I had some live albums that I liked, like The Final Ride by Paramore. That shit's fucking fire. But like, I don't know, it was just real specific instances where like maybe a YouTube video of a specific song, I was like, oh, that's a cool, I like what they did. It's the whole thing with live music, you get to change it up. And I'm like, whoa, they didn't do that on the album. That's dope. So, that's where live music has like pulled me in. Not where these are just like, they're just playing the songs how they are on the albums. So I'm like, part of me is like, why don't I just listen to the album then? But, well, I guess I still sort of feel that way. I'd have to listen to and compare and see what I appreciate more about this or less.
Yeah, man, I think if you listen to Nightmares Made Flesh, the recordings on that album, it sounds so much heavier.
I might have something.
Live album.
Honestly, in the next part, I might listen to Cancer of the Soul and see how that one sounds. Compare the studio.
Compare it to the studio, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Eaten and Outnumbering the Day, because I already know those, and those are in the next part. So with those 3 tracks, I'll focus on like comparing live versus studio.
And
I'll write that down.
I just feel like I also like. Don't get me wrong, Michael from Opeth is one of my favorite vocalists of all time. But on this live record, his voice sounded kind of rough, man.
It was gurgly.
You know, like it sounded like he had been doing this for a long time, and it was starting to wear on his voice a little bit.
Oh, you just need to drink some water.
Yeah, or
something simple.
He made a joke about this. They have this like spray that you can like go like that, and it hits the back of your throat and like coats it.
Yeah.
So that your singing is less painful or whatever, or growling.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not.
So you can really shred that shit up.
Yeah, that's what Michael from Opeth said. So we'll see, but yeah, I think I like the guy from Hypocrisy better on some of these songs. Peter Tartgren, I think is his name. Anyway, I think I don't know. I've been listening to the studio for so long that it's hard for me to give these live recordings a good fair shot.
You had to be there, man.
Yeah, I'm sure being there would have been nuts. Could you imagine seeing Bloodbath play like an hour-long set? That'd be nuts, man.
No, that would be insane.
It would be insane.
Yeah, no, I can't, like, I've never seen a single set be that, like, long. I mean, I'm not used to, like, big-ass headliners like that, but over an hour?
Did I tell you about that time I saw Opeth when I was, like, 12 years old, 13 years old, and Nevermore? You know who Nevermore is? Nevermore, World Dane, Jeff Loomis.
They have some
Van
Clone
Williams.
Hero. There's some stuff on Clone Hero.
Yeah, so they were supposed to play with Opeth, and their tour bus had an issue, and they couldn't make it to the venue. So Opeth played like a 2-hour-long set that night.
I mean, that's epic.
They played like 2 full albums that night. That was pretty amazing. But yeah, just. Speaking of long sets, but yeah, did you hear the crowd in this recording? It sounded like they were going nuts, like they were ravenous. It's just crazy, man. Because Bloodbath isn't like Slipknot; they're not like a huge band, and just to hear that and to know that many people came out to see them, and that they were that excited. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, I don't have much else to say about this first half.
Nah, me neither. I'm gonna listen to Cancer of the Soul more. Shit was fire.
But guys, let us know what else, or don't forget to like, comment, subscribe below. Let us know what else you'd like us to react to or review on the channel. And we'll be releasing this video soon, and our second half of this video we'll be releasing after that. So keep an eye on your notifications so you'll know when this video drops.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, y'all. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching.